Here in the second part of part 6 of section 6 of the Yoga Vasishta, we're getting the essence of the teaching. We're cutting right through the cultural context, which is the traditional context of Hindu mythology. We're cutting through the traditional notions associated with yoga, and we're getting to the heart of spiritual practice, or enlightenment, or liberation practice. It's what, as enlightenment practitioners, we have to deal with from moment to moment. Vasishta continued, "The world appearance arises in ignorance, and wisdom puts an end to it." This isn't a philosophical statement, it's a practical statement. Whenever we're automatically engaging with the world and assuming its reality, then we're operating in ignorance. Wisdom is when we realize the nature. We realize the insubstantial nature of the world. It's only a world appearance. And we come back to our essential being, the sense of the true nature of our essential being. But all this is meaningless to the reality itself, which neither arises nor ceases. The reality is always here. Consciousness, or in practical terms, the attention, is either identifying with it, or attention is identifying with other notions. But we can always come back to it. Either it shows itself to us, or we can directly turn the attention back to its own nature and realize, and in doing so realize the reality. That reality is the indivisible, infinite consciousness, apart from which nothing is. Look at all the ways you resist this. Apart from which nothing is. This is the soul, indivisible, infinite consciousness. This is the reality. Being able to acknowledge this, not as an item of belief, being able to acknowledge this as the reality of your own essential being, of who you are, essentially, right now. Being able to acknowledge this is the spiritual practice. But we put all these but, what about physical aspect of things, what about bad things which are happening, and all the rest of it. We don't like to go here, do we? We don't like to go here. We resist it. We somehow feel we're going to be shortchanged, actually. But the Yoga Vasishta often tells us not to grieve over perceived loss. But there's so much resistance to identifying with ourself, as if it's somehow selfish. The opposite is true. Not doing so is selfish. The Yoga Vasishta comes out and says it. Reality is the indivisible, infinite consciousness, and there's nothing else apart from that. That seems to undergo polarization within itself, thus becoming aware of itself as its own object. This seems to create a division and partial knowledge, which is ignorance. Such awareness is inherent in consciousness, but it is non-different from consciousness. This awareness is the attention. The attention is like a young puppy which wants to scamper all over the place. It's like the kid in a candy shop. It wants that, it wants that. Oh, look at that, that looks interesting. Oh, maybe I should have some of that. This is what the attention is doing. All over the place. All over the place. And the kid in the candy shop forgets about being the kid. There's only candy. There's only candy. This is what happens. Candy here, candy there. Look at that candy. Don't want any of that candy because I don't want the green stuff. I want the red stuff. There's only candy. And as exciting as that might be, what's the end result? Assuming you can get what you want, you're going to get quite sick. And if you don't get what you want, you're going to be disappointed. This is sorrow. This is suffering. This is the attention. Always looking for something. So many nice things to chase after. So many nasty things to avoid. When will I get fulfillment? And it's when the attention is always looking outwards or even inwards. That's what causes it to be eternally frustrated. When the attention realizes its own nature is consciousness. This is the awareness which is inherent in consciousness, which causes it to identify with its own notions and then create emotional relationships with these notions, between these notions. So this is the attention, this is the awareness, this is consciousness. The distinction between the world and its Lord is verbal and false. In the indivisible, infinite consciousness, no such distinction is meaningful. The word Lord has got a lot of unhelpful baggage, hasn't it? Religious and subservient baggage. But Lord here is the only power. It's the only thing of importance. There isn't anything else. There's no such distinction between Lord and anything else. And I suppose this is the feeling of the successful spiritual practitioner, the successful enlightenment practitioner. You're like an emperor or a lord, because there's nothing of interest out there. Why should the lord, why should the emperor deign to have any interest in anything outside its own circle? Because there isn't actually anything outside its own circle. On account of the illusory notions of time and space, somewhere at some time gold appears to have become a bracelet. Even so does the notion of a creation arise in consciousness, the notion of the world appearance, the notion of a world appearance actually being a physical reality. When thus even duality is non-existent, investigation into the causal relationship between the creator and this creation becomes meaningless. It's a temporary lapse only.